Hello, and here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Geoff Wilson Show. And I am fascinated about the conversation that I am about to have with Ray Schulte, the Director of Communications for the National Sports Collectors Convention. We're right here filming this right at the beginning of the show, and Ray is sitting down with us to answer some big questions that I have. I want to understand how the National works from a business perspective. Where does all the money go? Who's in charge of this? Who makes decisions? How do they plan out future nationals? How do they decide where they're going? And what is the National going to look like in the future? What changes are they making to support the growth of the hobby? If you've ever had any of these questions, if you're curious to hear, we're going to get you these answers right now. Ray, thank you so much for joining us today. As we're filming this, setup is going on around us. The National show floor is going to be opening in just a couple of hours, so you can see the activity and hear the activity. And this must be an extremely exciting moment for you. You've been working on the communications of this for months, right? Really, I'm sure ever since the last one ended, you probably turned your attention to this show, and it is all culminating up to the show opening here in the next couple of hours.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, all the work that you put into a project and to come here and see it, in fruition, it's pretty awesome.
There must be an extra level of pressure doing an event too, because there's no ability to miss. There's no ability to be late. It's not like if we're releasing an update to Market Movers and, it's taking us a couple of days longer than what we thought to get it all together and out. You don't have that option here. It is, you got, upwards of 100,000 people that are showing up at this building starting in a couple of hours. You better be ready.
Absolutely, yeah. Fortunately, we have a great team. But to your point, you really do need to be prepared. And that takes months in terms of knowing who's going to be here, what's about to happen. And then when you get here and you're out there, it's kind of almost like fluid freelance in terms of anything can happen. Anything could be needed, anything, in terms of, challenges on the floor or media-wise. So, yeah, you've always got to be attentive. It's almost like 24/7 for the whole week for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. I imagine you're not sleeping a whole lot. Well, we appreciate you sitting down here with us for a little while. So we'll jump right in, given that. Talk to me about this year's National specifically. What makes this year's National different and maybe even better than what we've seen in prior years?
That's a great question. For me, we went from 400,000 to 600,000 square feet.
That's a huge increase, by the way.
That is huge.
2 years ago when it was in Chicago, it was 400,000 square feet, 33% larger this year.
Yeah. And for me, I look at it that, it's a great opportunity for the industry, for the hobby, because what it happens, in past years, we've been sold out every year. And exhibitors, it's very difficult to get into the hobby or into the National. And so with the extra 200,000 square feet, we're able to bring in more exhibitors. And as you look around us, the corporate area is just in terms of, I've never seen it like this before. It's huge. Everybody's invested in this opportunity, but with the industry evolving, with technology being a prime component now within the industry, it's an opportunity for these companies to come in here and showcase their wares, showcase their product, which is good for us, but it's even better for the consumer, because the consumer can see basically what's transcending in the industry, and for me, that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting. The National is the Super Bowl, in that way. And gosh, so you increased the size of it 33% this year based on 2 years ago. Did you have any trouble selling it out, or did it sell out just as quickly as previous years? Could it be even bigger? Do you think it could be and of course, there's not even room for it to be bigger here, but if there were more room, do you think you could continue to make it even larger?
Well, that would be a decision we'd have to deal with. But I will tell you this, we still have people on the waiting list.
Yeah.
And and just because we went to 200,000 extra doesn't mean that we have space. We're kind of maxed out now.
Yeah.
And we've done a great job. I say Larry Ross, who's our floor operations guy, he's done a great job in terms of structuring the floor plan and the flow, and so. But it would be really tough to bring more people in. but I like your thought.
Next year we're going to Cleveland for the National. That was decided on a couple of years ago. How does the show floor in Cleveland compare in terms of size? Is it going to be this large? Is it going down a little bit next year?
It'll go down a little bit.
Just because of the size of the venue, it's being maximized out.
And Cleveland's a great venue. We've had great shows in Cleveland, so we're looking forward to that. But Chicago is for us. It's the ideal situation.
Yeah.
Everything works in terms of hotels and location.
Chicago's a great place to have it. This is my third national in Chicago that I've attended. It's awesome having all the hotels so accessible, like sky bridges between some of the hotels in the convention center, which was very helpful this morning because it was raining outside this morning, bad weather, which is something we haven't had at previous nationals in recent memory, and bad weather today. So that's an interesting little curveball being thrown in this year. But having that sky bridge allowed me to get right over and get right in. So and of course the proximity to the airport in Chicago is really, really nice as well.
I love Rosemont Village. I mean, when you go, there's a bowling alley. There's so many entertainment, outdoor concerts, and all in walking distance.
A lot to do. Yeah, and if you want to go into downtown Chicago, you can hop in an Uber and go. Yeah, it is convenient, certainly. So, that brings up a good question, right? So this year Chicago, next year's Cleveland, the following year Chicago. And then the year after that, there was a little bit of controversy on this last week where, I guess there were people who thought that had been locked in for Atlantic City, but then there was, I guess, a vote that took place. I guess it would have been yesterday, right?
No, there wasn't a vote yesterday.
Oh, okay.
There were presentations yesterday.
Presentations.
But basically what happened was that Atlantic City, in preparing for this presentation, put on their internal calendar the dates for the, so they didn't give it away to somebody else.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, by mistake, it went public.
It publishes on the web, and somebody found it.
Yeah, and so the representative from Atlantic City came in yesterday, along with Atlanta and Chicago. Didn't need to present because we were here. And he apologized for that.
Yeah.
But, it's something that I have to deal with.
Yeah.
Because, again, we're all about transparency now.
Yeah.
With the new group coming in. And that was just a mistake. And I think we caught it in time.
Yeah.
But
so when will the location for that, we're talking about 2026 now, when will that be decided on?
Well, last night, the new promoters had a little get-together conference, and we had about 160, 200 people there. And basically just kind of introduced themselves. And then we allowed Atlantic City to make a presentation. We allowed Atlanta to make a presentation, questions and answers, and it all went well. That was just to present. Now, they will vote on this coming up Thursday.
Okay.
And so the exhibitors will be voting.
Okay.
The management team is just responsible for doing the due diligence of markets. And in this particular case, they went out and they scoured about 27 different markets, and then they whittle it down. And it gets to a point where they will then make a presentation to the board of directors, and then the board of directors, and then whittle down to three. 3 presentations are in the bylaws. And so that's what the management group does. They pick 3 with approval of the board of directors, 3 locations, and then they present that to the exhibitors. And the exhibitors will look at that and then make a decision.
And is it just simply the exhibitors vote? Whichever of these 3 cities gets the most votes, that's where it's at? Is it as simple as that?
Simple as that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I need to, the only place I'd rather see it than Chicago is my hometown of Atlanta, Ray. I mean, Atlanta is a great option. Atlanta,
she made a great presentation.
It's a beautiful city, Ray. I mean, we would welcome everybody into Atlanta. So I will walk around the show floor and enthusiastically let dealers know that maybe they can vote for Atlanta. Maybe we can give them a little promotion if they do.
Atlanta, I think, could be a great venue.
It'd be great. Yeah. Well, okay. So that's great, because that was one of my questions, was how does this voting process work? It's on the top of everybody's mind right now. And then when will the winner be announced?
That is a good question. I think they have to tally the votes. And I think that they'll do that sooner than later.
Okay.
But the exact date, I don't know.
Okay. So I'm sure we'll have breaking news on our Sports Garden Investor Instagram. When that comes out.
We'll let you know first.
Okay, there you go. Appreciate it. All right, we will be breaking that news, ladies and gentlemen. So everyone, pay attention to that. Okay, so I want to go through a little bit of the history of the convention and kind of how it started, how we are today, how it works, who actually runs this thing, because it's such a, the scope of this is just so crazy right now. When did you get involved, Ray? Like, how long have you been involved in this?
This will be my 13th national.
So quite a while, but this is the 43rd national overall. So there's a whole 30-year history even before you got involved. The first one of these in 1980, I believe, in Anaheim, California, right?
Yeah, Mike Burkus was the founder.
Okay.
And Mike Burkus was the one that hired me for Baltimore.
Oh, cool.
I had just finished. I was representing Cal Ripken for 10 years, so I was in Baltimore. And the National was coming to Baltimore. So Mike called me up and said, "Hey, Ray, would you be interested in doing this? You know the Baltimore market. You can really help us out." And I said, "Yeah, Mike." And I love Mike Burkus. He was a great inspiration for so many, but me in particular. And so I said, "Yeah, Mike, let's talk." And so I agreed to come on, and it was a great show in Baltimore. And then it just, like every year, I just came back. I came back, and I love working with Mike, and so. But it's been an involvement in terms of my participation. I got more and more involved in the hobby at that time because of that. I was, as an agent representing players, I was on the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm.
Now I was on the inside, seeing what was transpiring within the industry, and I kind of got addicted, in terms of, I love the concept of collecting,
Mm-hmm.
And I was, as an agent, I was getting all these tchotchke stuff and all that, until one time a friend of mine gave me a vintage movie poster, and that's when it clicked. I had a collecting mindset. I wanted to collect original vintage movie posters, pre-1960, baseball or sports related, and that hooked me for just continuing on. I said, "Mike, let's go,"
Mm-hmm.
And so I just continued with him, and he passed away, and I miss him a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm really excited because the new group coming in, they have the same passion, they have the same vision, commitment, and transparency.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of good things about the new group, and I want to get to that in a minute. But tell me about, I know you weren't at the first Nationals back in the early 80s, but what have you learned about those? What were those like?
Magic.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think, in the early days, especially knowing Mike, he created situations, experiences that people just loved. And he was passionate about the hobby, so you knew that anything he did, anything he touched was thoroughly enjoyed. So, but I again, back then it was a little bit different in terms of it was mostly like vintage memorabilia,
Yeah.
The trading cards, but Mike was a wheeler dealer too. So he was always wheeling, dealing with trades. He loved dealing with the leagues. He loved dealing with with corporate. So it's evolved, but Mike's handprint is on it, like even to today.
I imagine those first ones were quite a bit smaller than what we are used to today, right?
Yeah.
But the National experienced big growth in the 80s because it was, I think, the Anaheim National in 1991.
Yeah, when you have those promo items,
that was the one that
yeah.
got over 100,000 people. That's still regarded as the record, right, for attendance.
Yeah.
Was it 91 Anaheim?
Yeah. But you remember all those, back then there was a lot of promos.
Yeah.
It was all about promos. Pogs. I don't know if you remember Pogs.
Yep. Sure do.
Those days, that's kind of what drew it.
Yeah.
And which is good, but it brought more people into the hobby.
Yeah. So you've been involved for 13 years. What has changed over the last decade with the National?
Well, for me, it's been content. Back then, you're always looking. I had a conversation with Mike. At one point, they didn't have an Instagram account, and I basically said, "Mike, we need to look at this, and we need to, be forward thinking." And he goes, "Ray, if you think so, go ahead and do it." So I started it, and back then it was all about trying to find content that's relative to one, the industry, and also to the show. And it was difficult because not everybody was geared up for that at the time. They weren't really in tune with what social media was capable of doing. And so it was a learning experience for me, but it's also, I spent a lot of time working with, corporates, even manufacturers, in terms of, hey, let's get something going. Mm-hmm. And so I think, to answer your question, I think the evolvement from then until now. I mean, look at today. I mean, today, if you go on our Instagram, we must have about 750 stories at one time, and they're still going. And and I think the biggest thing too is the content has gotten better. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think people like you have stepped in there and been providing some guidance, and people are looking at that saying, hey, that's where the bar should be. And so I think a lot of people are stepping up to the plate. And so for me right now, I could hire 2 full-time people just for content.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I agree. It's a way to bring the event to the world and bring the hobby to the world.
And that's a great point, because with the content that we have now, we have seen such a surge internationally. I mean, obviously we have friends in Australia, we have friends in Canada, but Korea, but we're getting people from Germany. I mean, we're getting people. I mean, I've got a group coming over from London, 50 people. Just a group, or coming over as a group to just come to the show. Mm-hmm. But it's never been as big as it is now, international following. Mm-hmm. And even like Canada as an example, we've always had people come down from Canada to go to the show, but now we have exhibitors come down, and exhibitors are participating in the show. And then the media is coming down. Yeah. I've got media coming in from Vancouver, from Toronto, that are interested in what's going on here. So it's evolved to a point where it's extremely exciting, but again, with the excitement comes what you earlier said. There's a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of challenges that you've got to stay on your toes to make sure that something doesn't slip through the cracks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's fascinating. So, who owns the National?
The National is a nonprofit.
Okay.
And it's owned by the board of directors.
Okay.
And the board of directors hires a management group.
Okay. And who is the board of directors?
Well, right now we have a new president of the board of directors, and his name is Al Dorso.
Are these dealers?
You have to be an exhibitor, a dealer. You have to be a dealer in the show to actually be on the board.
Okay.
That's
so
required.
The board of directors, the group that effectively owns the National, even though it is a nonprofit, right? So no one's directly profiting from it. But these are all exhibitors, so these are all dealers. So you've got a group of dealers that are the board that oversee this nonprofit.
Maybe 1 or 2 are retired, but they've been an exhibitor. A board for quite a long time.
Right.
So,
do you find is the board comprised of people who have been dealers for a long time? Are there fresh ones coming into the board, or how is kind of turnover? How does that work?
No, that's a great question. I think in the past, it's been a pretty strong board that made up. They've been there for quite a while. Mm-hmm. But I think now, like with Al coming in as president, and the new management group, and just by what's evolving in the industry, I think they're taking a serious look in terms of like, hey, what can we do to kind of maintain our understanding of the industry, and that means knowing social media, it means knowing marketplace. So that will be addressed during the off season.
Yep.
And but I think everyone is very, very excited about going in that direction. I am very excited because with the new group, I've been elevated to a point where I can create more than I've ever been able to do. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is with influencers, with corporations, things that are value for value propositions, and that's exciting.
Yeah. And I want to give you a compliment on that. You have done a great job with the social media of the National. You've got a lot of content that's going out constantly. You're finding interesting bits of content from other creators and reposting them, which I know all creators appreciate. It's a great thing. Mm-hmm. And the following has grown digitally of the national quite a bit, it seems.
And my intent is to start creating content, for the national, so that we can bring news to the the national followers. I love reposting because I look at it that the people that are posting, they're very conscious and passionate, and they work hard, and I like to kind of reward them by posting that and letting our followers see what they've accomplished. Mm-hmm. But I also want to start creating, and I will start doing this in the off season, more first contact.
Yeah.
Create content that that you want to learn more about.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very neat. So the National has the board, they run the nonprofit, and then they hire a management company. And you referenced earlier, the management company is changing after this year. This is the last National. With the previous management company, there's a new one coming on board. And I believe the new management company is the company that also runs, I think, the Chantilly show, the Philadelphia show. Am I right on that? The Philly show?
Yeah, Joe Ehrlich, he runs the Philly show and Chantilly in Virginia. And Jimmy Ryan.
Does a great job with those shows.
He's got a great, that's what I am excited about. He's got a great reputation.
Yes.
I've known Joe for quite a while, and I've always respected what he does. And then, you got Jimmy Ryan and Brian Coppola. They run the Westchester show. They won the Hofstra show. And so they too. And I've brought athletes to their show, so I know how they operate. And just really great salt of the earth people.
Yep.
And the one thing that Michael Burkus always did is he always listened. And so, in other words, I could have an idea, it could be off the wall, but he would listen. And these guys are the same way. They want, to listen to, they said, just let us know, and then we'll decide. But that's the exciting part. But all three of these guys are well known, respected, and excited about next year.
Good. That's really exciting. For the collector, for the attendee at this show, how do you think the change in management company might affect them? Like, what might they see differently coming to the show in the upcoming years that might be different than what they might see this year?
Oh, well, it's, for us, it's all about customer experience.
Yep.
And so, once the show's over, we will, gather and we'll determine, how can we enhance our customer experience. I think, what we have here today is a good start in terms of, what you bring to the table, the kids' trade zone. I mean, that's awesome. And so things like that are be top of mind. And so we'll think of things that make it better. And make it more, integrated in terms of working with our corporates.
Yeah.
And getting more participation. And I think I like to say that I think we've proved ourselves in terms of the corporate world, in terms of bringing a high quality show to the marketplace. And so I think now going back and saying, hey, we've accomplished this. Let's take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be open for ideas, and we're going to be thinking about ourselves as more visionaries than ever before.
Having gone to some shows, some big trading card game shows, and some other shows, seeing Dragon Con in Atlanta and some of these other shows outside of the National. One thing that struck me about those shows that has never really been the case at the National is they have a show environment that continues beyond the show floor. Whether it's food trucks and a beer garden, whether it's interactive exhibits, in the lobbies or outside or at the hotels, whether it's bands and music festival in the evenings, they have a way to extend the experience beyond just what happens on the floor from 10 to 6. Could you see the National pushing in more of that direction in the future?
Oh, absolutely. We started that with Ryan Johnson.
With the trade night.
With bringing the trade night into the convention center. And it's been very successful. This will be the second year. We're just brainstorming here. We're thinking about, doing a trade night every night.
I think that'd be wonderful.
And
an
maybe
official national trade night every night. Yeah.
Well, maybe one is like TCG.
Yep.
And one is maybe soccer. I mean, but the concept is there, and yeah, we are talking about doing that, and even internally too. There's things that we want to do, like with our athletes. Working with athletes, and I have worked with athletes, so I know this. I mean, when you're compensating them, they come in and they do what they do. Their mindset is not to go out and do an interview on the main stage. Whereas Comic-Con, that's kind of all built in from the start.
Sure.
So, but we are going to be talking about maybe doing something a little different, and enhancing that aspect too, and utilizing the main stage. The main stage to me is core. It's a great content. It's great for our corporates, but it's also great for the people that come in. It's a central point. That's what Mike always wanted. So we'll think of ways of being more creative on the stage too.
Yeah. I agree. It's those things. It also, there's so much going on though. Like, it's hard to get people's attention. I've always wondered if it would be smart or feasible to do almost like a content series, but maybe the day before the show, or something of that nature, right? Or maybe the morning of the show, when the show opens, the first day it opens at 4 p.m. I would think there'd be a lot of thirst for that. I would think there'd be a lot of interest in some of that programming, actual speakers, actual presentations, but that maybe isn't competing with the actual time the show's open.
Everything you just mentioned is on the table.
Yeah, interesting. Well, good. So it sounds like the new management company is giving kind of a fresh point in time to rethink things. And right at the moment that the hobby just seems to be growing like crazy. Do you find it interesting, Ray, that on the secondary market, we've seen the price of many sports cards wane over the last couple of years? We saw this real spike in 2020 and 2021, and things have cooled off some since then. But despite the market cooling off over the last 2 years, you got the biggest national ever. Like, how does that correlate?
I'm going to answer that by saying I think it's about the experience. I when I talk to the media, I don't talk to them about trading cards and memorabilia per se. I talk to them about the experience of coming down here and just walking around and seeing people interact. Now today we have families, and it hasn't been that long since, we've had more female collectors and mothers and daughters, but we're starting to get that. And thanks to a lot of the corporates for addressing that. But, we see that as, come down here and you don't have to buy a thing.
Yep.
You can just walk around here and just be in awe of everything that's going on. And that's one of the things I got excited about to answer your question earlier, was that now that we have technology, more people will come in to check out what's next. And I think that's important. And I hopefully, and I think they will, the show, that our corporates will kind of talk about, hey, this is what we have vision for the future.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned diversity, you mentioned women, right? And that's something that has been changing in a very positive way. You're seeing more women at the show. You're seeing more minorities at the show. This year, I believe, for the first time, the National has an African-American ambassador, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, going into this year, I got the idea. I started out a couple of years ago with Brody the Kid.
Yes.
Brody.
You had a kid ambassador, yes.
And Brody was he was super. He did such a great job in terms of bringing the kids into the fold. And so I kind of said, you know what? That works so well. Let's expand it. And I concentrated a little bit more on, the influencers that were basically young and were passionate and we're looking at content the same way I was, and so there was opportunities. I met Daryl, Dr. Collectible in Las Vegas at the Mint, and it dawned me, it clicked. I said, you know what, he's got to be part of this.
Yeah.
And it had it didn't matter whether he was black or white. To me, it didn't matter. I just saw a guy that got it. He understood it, and he was so not only passionate, but he was real. He was authentic, and I love that. And so I just proposed. I said, "Listen, Daryl, what do you think?" And his eyes lit up. And I think it was just the right time in his career and for what we needed that it made sense. And then when he came on, then I started thinking, well, hey, this is great, but let's cover everybody.
Yep.
Let's cover women. Let's cover, let's cover a little older. And so it grew. I think we have like 8 or 9 ambassadors now.
Fantastic. Good.
And basically, I tell them, I said, listen, I know you're out there creating content for yourself, and I applaud that. I want you to do that. But I also want you to kind of provide, our followers an opportunity to see what's going on in the industry, how we prepare for this once we get here, and, create the content, and then basically, we'll collab on it, and it'll be a win-win for everybody.
Right.
So, but they'll get involved with our corporates. They'll get involved with. I've got them teamed up with some athletes that they'll talk to, which is good. I mean, they've got their own followings, and they do it in such a way that it's extremely interesting and timely. So for me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, we've seen the landscape of events in the sports card hobby changed and increased a lot in the last few years. Nothing has, certainly risen to the scope of the national, but you've had events like Mint Collective,
Sure.
which, takes on kind of a new angle and gets a lot of the corporates there. Recently, we've had the announcement from Fanatics
Sure.
that they're getting into the events business.
Yep.
Do you know what that looks like? Do you anticipate Fanatics parting with the national, or do you anticipate them competing with the national, or do you anticipate them doing something completely different?
And that's a great question. And I've been asked that question before, and the way I answer it is, in my opinion, we haven't scratched, the surface when it comes to an expansion of the industry. We're so small, and the upside is so big. So for me, it's all about growing the industry. I mean, there's card shops and card shows in small towns and regionals that are popping up all the time. I look at that as great because that's kind of an opportunity to bring in more collectors. And because I feel like we still have a huge upside, I don't think that's a negative. Fanatics is a great partner of ours, and we love working with them. I look at it that it's an opportunity to, again, increase the category and bring in more people. So is it competition? Oh, I don't think so. Not at all. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're optimistic that, hey, we'll have a dialogue.
Yep.
But it's not competition. Because if I thought all the new card shows, both local and regional, were competition, I'd be self-defeating.
Yeah.
And I think, with all that happening and the fact that we've got 600,000 square feet plus people on the waiting list, it's got to tell you that it's not competition. It's growing. It's helping us grow.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it.
I love the thought. Ray, this has been really, really great. For anybody out there who either didn't make it to the National this year, maybe hasn't been the National before, might be thinking about maybe trying to come next year, what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, I hopefully they can make it out, but if they can't, definitely Cleveland's going to be a great show too. I love Cleveland, the venue there. We've had a couple of shows there already, so I would just do check our website out and follow us on our social media. I think once we recap everything that's gone on here, I think that will tell a story for people looking to see if the National is for them next year. And I hope people like you, relay the story that, hey, this was a great experience and something that you've got to see, especially if it's for the first time. It's once, to me, it's still a once in a lifetime experience. And I've been doing this 13 years and I still get excited every time I step through the door. Yeah,
it is. It's the Super Bowl. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I felt that level of excitement this morning coming in here as well.
Great.
It's amazing. And for everybody out there, make sure to get to one of these if you haven't already. It's unbelievable. Ray, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us. And I know you're busy. I'm going to let you get back to it. And for everybody out there, I want to remind you that the Geoff Wilson Show, of course, these videos are available every Thursday in full length on YouTube, but also on Apple Podcasts and also on Spotify for the audio version. And then we also show highlight clips on It's Geoff Wilson social media on Instagram and TikTok. So make sure to check that out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon in the next episode. Take care.